is an attorney. He's a member at large of the NCGOP Executive Committee. Why are you laughing? But he's a good one. He's a good one. No, this good one's a good one.
She knows me so well.
And he's also a fellow New Yorker. He talks New York. He's a member at large of the NCGOP Executive Committee, former vice chair of the 11th District GOP, and chair of the Cherokee County GOP. Recently, and this is just wonderful, it just happened, Leo was selected as one of 2 attorney advocates for the children in custody with Family Services of the Eastern Band of Cherokee as an advocate for the children who are the future of that great community. His work will help these children to make a smooth transition to safe homes that honor the traditions of the Cherokee Nation. And on top of everything else, it was his birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Leo. Happy birthday to you.
I'm going to go over a couple things, and then Leo is going to make sure that I don't leave anything out. But one of the things that we want you to do is we want to make sure everybody's included in this. Leo is going to be asking the questions of the candidates. The candidates will have 3 minutes. Mary Ann is going to be the timekeeper, and Tom is going to have the signs. You want to hold them up? Well, that says stop. You got to do it the other way. It'll be 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then stop, okay? So that's number 1. The other thing is that you have little cards in front of you and pencils. If you have a question, put it on the card, and I want you to pass it to the aisle, and Doug is gonna come and pick them up. Please don't wait until the end, because I don't want a 10-minute break in between Leo's questions and yours. What we're going to do is this. There's 3 of us that are going to go in the back, and we're going to be sorting your questions in piles. Main ideas, issues. So if we have 5 or 6 issues, your questions are probably going to be similar. We will pull out about 5 or 6 questions, but any question we do not get to, my homework tomorrow is going to be to upload them to the website, and then we will get them out on Facebook, and we will get them to the candidates, I promise, okay? So you will get an answer to your question if you don't get your question answered tonight. So that's how we're going to try and include everybody and make sure that everybody walks away happy. Okay. The other thing is, if you can hold your applause to the end, no outbursts or booing. You're all great conservatives, and you're all really polite. We're not Democrats. So at any rate, that's pretty much what I have to say.
You left that one part about Catholic school.
Oh yeah, we're both from Catholic school. Makes it really bad. New York and Catholic school, oh my God. Okay, all right, I don't think I left out anything. You want to take it over?
Sure.
Okay, however, we do have 2 things. We have 2 things, You're going to love this. I found this wonderful prayer. It's called, it's a pastor, and I know you're going to enjoy this. It was a prayer given in Kansas at the opening session of the Senate, and it seems prayer still upsets some people. When Minister Joe Wright was asked to open a new session of the Kansas Senate, everyone was expecting the usual generalities, but this is what they heard. Heavenly Father, we come before you today to ask your forgiveness and to seek your direction and guidance. We know what your word says. Woe to those who call evil good, but that is exactly what we have done. We have lost our spiritual equilibrium and reversed our values. We have exploited the poor and called it the lottery. We have rewarded laziness and called it welfare. We have killed our unborn and called it choice. We have shot abortionists and called it justifiable. We have neglected to discipline our children and called it building self-esteem. We have abused power and called it politics. We have coveted our neighbor's possessions and called it ambition. We have polluted the air with profanity and pornography and called it freedom of expression. We have ridiculed the time-honored values of our forefathers and called it enlightenment. Search us, O God, and know our hearts today. Cleanse us from every sin and set us free. Amen. Amen. I want to tell you what, in 6 short weeks, the Central Christian Church, where Reverend Wright is pastor, logged more than 5,000 phone calls, with only 47 of those calls responding negatively. The church is now receiving international requests for copies of this prayer from India, Africa, and Korea.
Wow.
So I was pretty jazzed when I found it. It's now up on our website. I would like Kevin Sigmund, Beth, to please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now get out of
Before we start, I want to say a special thanks to the Asheville Tea Party and all the organizations attached to that for inviting me and inviting all of our guests here tonight to give you their closing arguments. Because as you know, next week at this time we will have a new state party chair and a new state party vice chair. And this is something I've not shared with many people, but as you know, with me running last year and with the races I ran for the party out here in the 11th Congressional District, I left the party for about 10 years, 10 or 12 years. And after the Obama election, I saw the enthusiasm and the encouraging words and the actions of the Tea Party. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give them another try. And I say thank you, because now I'm home in the Republican Party and I don't plan to ever leave again. I guess what I'm saying is, Father, forgive me, I've sinned. But I do mean that it has been a pleasure to work with Jane to put this together. And I want you all to keep one thing in mind. We started off with a very high note. We're all family in here. We all believe Republican. And I just hope that we can hold applause, as Jane has asked, until everything is done. Be respectful to one another, because we're not Democrats. And as the Sisters of Mercy used to tell us, we're going to act like ladies and gentlemen. Or, as my hands will show, there could be some punishment. But anyways, we're here to have fun. We're here to learn about these folks. And I'm really excited about this. One thing that was not mentioned, and I know this is a contention with some of these forums, is that we're going to allow each candidate to have a chance to rebut something twice, okay? So use that sparingly, because we have 5 people here. We've got a little extra time since there's only 5, so I want to make sure we get through my questions, and once you have questions, Jane, I want the folks to have their questions answered first once you start getting those. I went through these before when I ran last year for district court judge, and sometimes there's no questions, and I sat there with my opponent at one event and we had 1 question each and we just sat there for 2 hours. And I don't want that happening here, so I do have a few questions. As Jane said, each will have 3 minutes to use as they want. She also informed me that if you do not answer the questions, that there will be retribution. I don't know what that means. I just caution you that she's over there, and the ladies that are running for vice chair are the closest to her, so you might want to be careful when your time comes to make sure. And Mr. Womack, keep an eye out on your right there. Thank you. I think that's all the housekeeping, so if we're ready, gentlemen.
Leo, is Mr. Lewis not going to be here?
I can respond to that. Mr. Lewis sent a message to Jane at about 10:45 this morning, and he had a personal emergency. I love you.
Sorry. It's a good song.
I know it was. That's why I said I love you. So he's not going to be here, nor is Asaria going to be here. So unfortunately, we will not hear from Mr. Lewis. But we did keep his name tag up there. So in case you do have questions, we will get those to him. Okay. All right. Since you're closest to me, you're the first victim.
Excellent.
Mr. Watley, my first question, and I did write these down, and as you know, I don't like doing that, but I want to be fair to everybody. So I want to make sure if I have to reread the question, it is the exact same question that was asked the first person. So we'll start with Mr. Watley, and then the next question we'll do Mr. Womack first. So, Mr. Watley, the next election cycle will be unlike anything North Carolina has ever seen. This will cause the NC GOP to raise more money than ever. We need to raise tens of millions of dollars to help run the RNC convention in Charlotte, as well as raise money for 2 vacant congressional seats and the other 11 congressional seats, a U.S. Senate race, retake the governor's mansion. Not to mention the hundreds of others of General Assembly races, judicial races, and Council of State races. The question posed to the two of you, starting with Mr. Watley, is what experience in fundraising do you have, and what specific plans will you implement as chairman of our state party?
Well, I appreciate that question, and I'm glad that you set out the importance and the magnitude of the cycle that we're going to have before us. I think when we look at how we want to fundraise for this party, we need to look at 3 levels. So we have a donor class in North Carolina. Right now, that donor class is not donating to the party because of the ethics issues that we have had, and that the party right now is basically insolvent. So we are going to have to be able to re-engage that donor class and get them back involved. And I've had a number of conversations with those folks who have reassured me that if I am to win this thing, that they will re-engage with us as a party. But we cannot be dependent on those guys, right? We need to set up a small donor program. If you go to any of the Trump rallies, you will see on the podium sign, text Trump to a number. And when you engage with that online program, they ask you for $5, $10, $25, $50, and that program is really important for getting those dollars in. We need to be able to set that up for the state level. Third, when I was Elizabeth Dole's chief of staff, we got on a plane, Bill Frist plane, he was the majority leader at the time, we flew down to Nashville, Tennessee, and she was the keynote speaker for the Tennessee GOP Black Tie Gala Dinner. They raised $1 million that night. They'd raised $1 million that night for the previous 10 years. No telling what they're raising for it now. This is a top 4 state for the president, top 2 state for the Republican governors, pickup opportunities. We're going to have the most expensive Senate race in the country. We can bring national political talent down here to North Carolina. It's going to be very important for us to be able to do that and have them headline events for us here, right? And then I think it's very important. I was at an event with Vice President Pence the other night on Wednesday. They raised $1.35 million for the RNC and the Trump campaign. They've had 4 or 5 different events with the Vice President, 4 or 5 different events with the President. We should be able to have one of those events that's going to go to the state party. My particular background, I am very heavy in financing and fundraising. So I am a member right now of the National Finance Board for the Republican Governors Association. I work with the Republican Attorney Generals Association, the Congressional Leadership Fund, my favorite, the House Conservative Fund, and we do run an energy fundraising series for members of the Senate. So I have experience at all of the levels that we're going to need to be operating on as we move forward, and I think that the fundraising is going to be critical, very critical element as we move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Womack, do you want me to reread the question?
No, that's fine.
Is this on?
Okay, good. So, in my second career as an IT executive, I had to be an accomplished salesman. And in that 10-year period that I served from 1997 to 2007, I closed $100 million worth of IT sales and services. That's my experience factor in building a brand, a value proposition, and selling that to the clients. That's what's imperative in this party. What we've relied on in the past, and it hasn't worked very well because it's too cyclical, is reliance on a Rolodex and being able to call in donors, big money donors, and expecting them to bail out the party or to support a party that they don't really believe in the brand. So we've been shaming people into giving to the party, or alternatively, we've been making them feel pity on the party. In the future, what we have to do to be successful is build a business model. This party is not a club, it's a business, and it's a goal-directed activity. Our job is to raise money to elect Republicans to office. And in order to do that, we have to first restore the brand of the party. The brand of this party is damaged right now because we have our chairman under federal indictment. And the brand has been damaged because of alleged scandals down in the 9th Congressional District. That brand has got to be restored. So the first thing about doing that is to show unity in the party and to show that we are actually our goal-directed activity, that this party actually is a party of the people as the framers intended. And as our Constitution says, we're the party that believes in life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of the fruits of our labors. And when we restore that brand of this party, which we will do in the ensuing months after the election, then people will have something to believe in and to invest in. And that's what we have to do, is to convey that this is the party of the people. This is the party of traditional American values. That the Democrat Party is the party that is trying to move us towards socialism. And that their investment in this party is an investment in traditional American values, the traditions that we all cherish, that we all hold dear, the Judeo-Christian values and principles. So that's a part of it. My opponent mentioned 3 levels of donations. There are 3 levels. The first level is the donor class, which we've been relying on, that isn't giving now. The second is the business class of the party. And the business class of this party are young business professionals that can give money but don't right now because they don't know what they're investing in. So I intend to roll out a salesmanship-like program which has a pipeline attached to it, and in that program it will identify the things that we will actually purchase and where the money will go, so that they will actually be satisfied that the money's being spent wisely. And then the base of the party, which is giving virtually nothing right now, and hasn't for years because they don't believe that the leadership of the party cares about them. I will restore that confidence, and so we can raise as much as $2 or $3 per Republican in the state, which would triple what we raise currently. So those are just a few ideas, and there's many more about strategic partnering with industry and strategic partnering with NASCAR and some other things that we will do. Thank you.
Mr. Womack, this next question will start off with you. With the departure of Executive Director Dallas Woodhouse in the coming month, the volunteers and donors of the party will be on edge to see who will be his replacement. As leader of the state party, what direction will you give to the new executive director as to what his or her role will be within the party?
Okay, so the executive director of the party works at the discretion of the central committee of the party. That's the way our governance structure is set up. And that means that we have to obey what's in the plan of organization that describes what the executive director does. And far be it from me to tell the central committee or to deviate from what the requirements of the plan of organization are. Basically, the executive director of the party, by outline in the plan of organization, makes the trains run on time. He's the person, he or she is the person that is supposed to ensure all the resourcing is done, to make sure that the headquarters is responsive to the district and county chairs, to ensure that communications are occurring effectively, to include the communications director of the party being on message and on point without embarrassing the party. The executive director is responsible for making sure that we are recruiting candidates, that we are grooming those candidates, that we're preparing them in every way so that they can run an effective race. The executive director of the party is also responsible for collaborating with the various entities around the state, the affinity groups like the Frederick Douglass organization and the teenage Republicans, college Republicans, etc. So he's got a lot of tasks to perform. The important thing about the executive director, from my perspective, is that he operates. He's hired by the Central Committee and operates under their supervision, but the chairman of the party is also responsible for everything the party does or fails to do. So the executive director and I will interact very regularly and very actively to make sure that what he or she is capable of doing, I will complement, and I will work independently of him on the other things that are not being done by the party or that require my leadership skills. The executive director of the party must be in Raleigh routinely every day. I live close to Raleigh, so I will plan to be there to interact directly with them and face to face with him or her. There are occasions where I will need to travel, and the executive director will be back there minding the fort, so to speak. So, I don't think there's. I think the one thing that I would emphasize about the executive director and his relationship or her relationship back to me is the fact that we have to complement each other effectively. We cannot be in an adversarial relationship, and we cannot have anything public where it shows an incongruity between the executive director and the chairman. So I will expend an enormous amount of energy to make sure that we are continuously synchronized with everything that we're doing, and to make sure that the executive director is meeting all the requirements of the Central Committee, and that anything that he or she cannot accomplish, I will make sure it's being taken care of myself. Thank you.
You want me to rewrite that for you?
No, thank you. So look, I think first and foremost, as we're looking at what we've got to have in this election cycle, and again, go back to the fact that this is one of 4 states that President Trump must win in order to win his reelection. Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, right? We're the top 2 state opportunity for a pickup for the Republican governor, and we also have the Senate race is going to be the most expensive in the country, plus our judicial races and others, right? So this is a national focus state. So I have talked with folks on the executive committee who are currently running the search. I have told them that I would like to see us open it up to a national level search. There are probably people in North Carolina I think capable of this position, but I do think that we don't want to limit ourselves in terms of just looking here in North Carolina. Frankly, we need a workhorse, not a show horse. All right? I'm a very metrics-driven guy, and when we look at this election cycle, whether it's the fundraising, how much do we need to raise? We'll have 18 months to be able to raise that money. How many messaging and communication platforms are we going to have to develop and launch over those 18 months? How many volunteers are we going to have to recruit and train and work with the counties over those 18 months and set up a series of metrics and make sure that we have a professional staff led by the executive director that is going to understand those metrics, and we're going to be able to have those conversations on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis and a half-year basis so that we don't get to 6 weeks out and say, oh crap, that didn't work. We need to be able to identify issues early on and fix them so that we're moving forward with it, right? The gentleman or lady who's going to take this thing on has got to have professional level experience working on statewide campaigns in previous election cycles. I'm not going to take a salary with the party. I want to take that money and invest it into the staff. We're also going to have a professional communication staff who understands how you put together a messaging platform over the course of 18 months, not just engaging in a 24-hour news cycle. We're going to have a finance staff who understands that we don't need to just make phone calls to high-dollar donors to plug the gaps at the party. We need to understand we're having events. How are we doing on planning the events? How are we doing on bringing people into the events and everything else that we're going to be doing? The entire staff needs to be upgraded significantly for the party. We need to have customer service. We need to be addressing what we're doing with the county chairs, the district chairs, members of the Central Committee and Executive Committee, and that is all going to flow from the chairman and from the executive director.
Mr. Watley, you'll have the next question first.
Over the last 2 election cycles, the Republican Party has missed the mark in judicial elections. What will your administration do to ensure that we win our Supreme Court and appellate court races in 2020?
Let me just start by saying that we will take them seriously. I think what happened to Barbara Jackson in the last cycle is a travesty. I think what happened in the cycle before with Bob Edmonds was very avoidable. I think that we are looking at a situation right now where Tom Steyer and George Soros and progressives are putting tens of millions of dollars into elected judicial races, attorney general races all around the country. We need a dedicated program within the party to raise significant money to be able to help train and fund and support the candidates for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. We also need to make sure that they can do their own fundraising and that we are working with national groups who want to see conservative judges on the bench. The training that we need to put in place for them needs to be able to trickle down to our candidates at the judicial system. We need to build a TV studio in the basement of the party where we can set it up and run TV commercials, film TV commercials for those candidates, for the courts, also for Council of States, also for members of the General Assembly. And then we can have the data systems in place to be able to get the data from the RNC and the Trump RNC data center. We can parse that out on a county by county basis, a district by district basis, and give that along with the video to those candidates so that they can go out there and advertise without having to run through high-priced consultants. But I think when we look at the tone and temper of where we've been with the judicial races, this is a party that has not been there for our candidates for the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, and we need to be there for them across the board. The fact that we have a 6-1 Democratic majority on the Supreme Court makes it that even if we have veto overrides in the House and the Senate, even if we have a Republican governor who's going to sign legislation, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to go find a district court judge and they're going to file a lawsuit. And then they're going to go to the Court of Appeals, which is run by Democrats, and then they're going to go to the Supreme Court, which is 6-1 Democrat. Let me tell you, on the Florida recount, I was on the legal team in Broward County, the only county that finished it recount for 34 days. We had a lawsuit down there that said you cannot run a partial recount, you have to run a full state recount. The Florida Supreme Court was packed with 7 Democratic appointments. They ruled 7-0 against us that went up to the Supreme Court. Thank God there was a 5-4 majority at the Supreme Court that overturned them, and we were able to get the ruling that there would have to be a full state recount, at which point Mr. Gore backed down. But these are judges, are politicians in robes, and we need to treat them that way, and we need to compete with these races and give them the funding and the support that they need.
Thank you. It's a great question. Back in 2014, going all the way back 6 years, we began messing up on the judicial elections. You'll remember we focused a lot of energy on Mark Martin as a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and we let those other 3 associate justices fall by the wayside. That was the first alarm for me. The second alarm was Bob Edmonds in 2016 when he couldn't get any help at all. In 2018, I stood side by side with then Chairman Robin Hayes and appealed that business as usual wouldn't get Barbara Jackson reelected, or wouldn't get her reelected. And he stood and said, well, just put an R beside her name, it's simple enough. And I said, no, not that simple. And I said, she's going to be in desperate shape if we don't do more for her, and we didn't, and she didn't win. Folks, it's more desperate than any other thing in the state of North Carolina right now is the fact that we've lost control of the judiciary, both the appeals court and the Supreme Court. And I've committed myself to never letting that happen again. Regardless of whether I win this race, we're going to make sure that our justices win this year. So there's several things that we have to do to make that happen. The first thing is we got to get the justices and the Council of State races, all these candidates have got to get out of the logistics business. They spend so much time trying to get signs and campaign materials all over the state, they don't have time to campaign. And folks, we can fix that. I'm going to fix that. I've already started coordinating to put a system of warehousing and receiving points all over the state. We've got a central receiving warehouse and distribution warehouses at all the Council of State and all the judicial candidates. All they have to do is send it to a drop point, and we will break it down and distribute it all over the state for them. They'll never again have to worry about that. The second thing is we got to get them in the business of professional messaging. Very few people realize that 2.5 million voter guides got mailed all over the state last year. And the reason those voter guides were so effective for the Democrats is because they professionally edited all of the judicial candidates' write-ups, and we didn't do it. And you can tell by reading it. I had people go to the polls, Republicans going to the polls that were conservative and said, well, I like this guy Anglin. His write-up is better than hers. And that's why we lost votes, folks. We got to stop that. We'll do professional editing of all of our write-ups. Third, we've got this digital studio that my opponent mentioned. We're already working on putting that into the headquarters. In fact, it won't fit in the basement. It's got to go up in the chairman's office up on the first floor. And we're going to make that happen. We're going to install that. I've already found the resources to put it in. It's not going to cost the party any money for the studio. It's a decommissioned studio that we've already made arrangements to bring into the headquarters after I get elected. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to get them started making professional videos and being able to share that all over the state. And the last thing I'll do is, look, I'm going to bring in some smart legal minds. And you know, when I win this election, I'm going to ask the commitment of my 2 lawyer opponents. I'm going to ask them to commit themselves to coming in and helping us when we have these battles. And I'm sure that they'll provide their good offices and their expertise to help us if we have any challenges in the courts.
Mr. Womack, the next question is for you first. In 2018, the NC GOP took a big hit to our momentum in North Carolina by losing our supermajority in the General Assembly. What plans do you have to counter what has already taken place to break the majority strategy of Roy Cooper and retake our supermajority in the state?
Okay, so we're perilously close to losing even a simple majority right now. What we really need to do is to restore the supermajority. So one of the mistakes that we made 2 years ago or a year ago was that we attempted to put a person on every ballot for every race across the state. That strategy just didn't work because what it did is it watered down our resources, and it allowed the Democrats to focus resources where they knew they were going to win races. And so it was really a strategy that broke it back. We lost a lot of seats because of that. We'll get those back because we're going to recruit better candidates. We're going to recruit candidates and better groom them for competition. The second thing we're going to do is, as I mentioned, we're going to have a digital studio where we will allow folks to come in and do professional videos, podcasts, and that sort of thing in the headquarters. That will allow them to have a resource available to them they've never had before. And then a third thing would be to also, they can take care of our common infrastructure that we talked about before. Those things that we provide for every council of state and every legislative race. The other thing I will do is try to act more as an advisor to the Speaker of the House and the President Pro Tem of the Senate, which is a role that the chairman in the last decade has not exercised, a role of being a liaison and an advisor of sorts to help them with campaigns. We'll work closely with the caucuses and the caucus expenditure committees, so that those affiliated committees, so that they will spend money appropriately on those races. We'll help them with resourcing the races. We are in the business of raising funds, and we'll help resource those races. There are a number of other things that we can do to help the legislative battles and resecure the supermajority. I think that perhaps one of the things that we could do is have these candidates spend more time in the headquarters, feel like they can come to the headquarters and get advice and get resourcing or get information for their races. A fourth thing I think that's really important is the automation support that we provide for the candidates and their committees. We don't provide today, the Red Advantage app that we provide really doesn't help them in their door-to-door campaigning. So we'll improve on the digital technology that they have available to them and improve the data that's behind that digital app, so when they go door-to-door, they'll be able to be more effective in reaching out to the voters, and their campaign committees will be more effectively served that way as well. And then the last thing would be a nation builder. A lot of the counties here in the 11th district have been implementing Nation Builder. By us putting Nation Builder, completing the deployment of Nation Builder and making sure that it's got a good public-facing side, we'll provide more information to the voters there on behalf of those candidates in those counties and districts. And then I think on the back end, we'll have better contact management and better financial management in the Nation Builder utility functions. So I think those are a number of the ways that we can provide help that will lift all the votes in the party, particularly the legislative candidates.
Yeah. So I have had a number of conversations with Speaker Moore, with the President Pro Tem in the Senate, with Harry Brown, who is the majority leader in the Senate, as well as with John Bell over in the House, the majority leader there, and the caucus leaders, to talk about what it is that they need in the House and the Senate. What they need in the House and the Senate is going to start with funding. They need to know that the caucus funds that they're putting into the state party and working through the state party with are not going to be raided and used as a piggy bank by the state party. And we're going to have financial resources at the state party that we're not going to have that be at risk. Now, if the caucuses want to run their money outside the party, that is absolutely no problem, because I will help raise money for them, whether it's run through the party or whether it's run separately or independently. But they need the assurances that they're going to have the resources that they need to be able to protect their majorities, expand their majorities in the caucus. When it comes to digital information, right? The Trump RNC Data Center. This was created during the 2016 by the Trump campaign. A gentleman named Brad Parscale, who is the digital director. It is the first time that any presidential campaign has ever used more than 50% of their advertising budget online as opposed to TV. And it was an absolutely incredible success. Brad is now the campaign chairman, the campaign manager for the Trump campaign, and the system has migrated over to the RNC. Now the problem that we have here in North Carolina is that the nation builder system that Jim was talking about is incompatible with the Trump RNC system. So we need to be able to get a data system in place down here that is compatible with Trump RNC. They are right now evaluating 4 different apps and vendors. They are going to be coming out with recommendations in the near future to be able to say these are the preferred vendors. And then they are going to work with us here at the state. And they're going to help us transition over to work with the new data so that we can get it out to the county parties, we can get it out to the House and the Senate caucus and their members, and make sure that they have the data they need for door knocking and phone calls, and that we can take that data and move it back up to the national campaign. And then again, of course, we will have the digital studio to be able to bring those guys in, be able to film their quality, TV quality ads, and then give them the data for their districts and be able to have them send that out there. Finally, we need to recruit and train thousands of volunteers all across this state. Right now, the state party has not recruited and trained any volunteers for what has come out of the congressional race in the 9th. We're not providing any support at all for Dan Bishop. We're not in a position to be able to help what's going to happen with folks coming out of the primaries in March. And we need to be able to recruit and train those volunteers and bring them in to help across the board. But the whole key is we've got to have a working relationship with the leadership in the House, with the leadership in the Senate. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my opponent just made a mistake, because the truth is that Nation Builder is not a data store. Nation Builder is an application. And Nation Builder, there's nothing wrong with Nation Builder, and it's not incompatible with the RNC's data. What he's trying to say is that the GOP data center is data that needs to be fed into Nation Builder. And there are already measures being taken now to make sure that the data layer that supports Nation Builder, the data layer, the data warehouse or the data layer, actually is compatible with everything that the RNC provides. Today, the incompatibility, and I think where he's confused, the incompatibility is between I-360, which is a commercial data layer or data source, and our GOP data center, which is a data center we already have access to, and it's provided by the Trump campaign, the Victory campaign, and the RNC. So those features are already there, and they're already used. In fact, I used them in the election in 2018. That's why we were so successful in Lee County, because we used the best data that was available to us, made available by the Trump campaign. So the truth is that Nation Builder is still a good application. It's just not been trained effectively. It hasn't been used effectively. It hasn't been implemented comprehensively around the state. But GOP Data Center is the data that comes from the RNC. That's their official data. And we will be using that data to back up the mobile app, Red Advantage, which a lot of you may have used the last time around. We'll make sure that that data is what feeds into the Red Advantage app, which all of you at the grassroots level of the party will be using, to make sure that you're able to know a lot about that voter when you go in, that you'll know everything you need to know about that family when you knock on a door, and be able to successfully campaign for your candidates. There's a lot of fixes that need to be made in the application, but the data software or the data layer that's there now is sound, and it's coming from the Trump campaign.
Did you wish to use a rebuttal?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blackman, this next one is yours.
No, I'd be.
Is it you? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, you rebutted me, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes they get them right.
Next question. As a national delegate to the 2016 RNC convention in Cleveland, Ohio, I witnessed the amount of work involved to put together the finished product. This will be the biggest event ever held in Charlotte. The impact of it will carry across the state. What role will your administration take in making this convention operate smoothly? And more importantly, how can we focus on the convention without losing focus on the November elections?
Well, I think that's a really, really critical question. So I'm that you raised that with us. So what I will say is this, that the RNC has put together a convention team, and right now they are on ground. We have a host committee. We have a finance committee. I'm actually working with the finance committee right now to help raise the $70 million that they are going to have to raise to be able to host the convention here. And that will be set up as essentially a standalone operation as we're moving forward. So as the chair of the host state, there will be a role for me as the chair, and we'll have activities throughout the course of the convention. And I think the other big thing that we're going to probably need to do is make sure that we can act as a conduit for all of the folks in North Carolina that want to volunteer for the convention. As a matter of fact, I've been talking with Pat Smith, who's the chair of the North Carolina Federation of Republican Women, and they have put together a list of all of the different folks that have come to them and want to volunteer, and we've made sure that we plug them in with the host committee folks. So, they have a team on the ground that's working on that already. Ronna McDaniel and her team over at the RNC, so that will be fully functioning. We are there to complement them. But you raise a really good point in saying we cannot take our eye off this election cycle because we're going to have the convention here, right? The governor's race, the Senate race, obviously the presidential race are going to be very significant. But I think it's critical for us as we look at all of the aspects of where we are as a party that we need a reset in Raleigh. We cannot have party leadership under indictment as we're heading into this convention. We have got to have honest, transparent leadership at the party, communications and metrics across the board so that we are putting our best foot forward as a state. Folks have said that this issue at the party will blow over in a week. No, it won't. It will be brought up by the Democrats the entire time through the convention, the entire time through the election. We need to be able to put a new, fresh, clean face forward for hosting this convention, and North Carolina clearly is going to be up to the task, and us with the party are going to be up to the task as well. Thank you.
Okay, so the convention is very important. And in setting the stage for the convention, the first thing that you have to do is convince the voters and the citizens of North Carolina that we're genuine in our conservatism in this state. And that's very important. And people take it for granted that we've got a special election in Congressional District 9 this year. And the Democrats are looking at that on the national scale and saying if we can win that election, we will set the stage for a blue victory across the nation. This is the first of the great cycle of elections that are going to occur this fall, CD9, and it's right there in the Charlotte area. If they can win that race, they can lay claim that we're going to brand North Carolina a blue state, and we're going to win North Carolina, we're going to defeat Trump. This is a very important race. So it starts by winning Congressional District 9. I'm going to pour a lot of resources and time into that race this fall. The next thing is the municipal races in Charlotte. We almost got cleaned out in the last couple of elections in Charlotte. So we got to make sure we've resourced and that we're working on black urban radio and with the minority community. We're going to start winning some races down in the municipal areas of Charlotte. And Waxhaw's got a mayor's race up, Edwin Elam, and we're going to win that race. We're going to start by winning some of these races down here and planting the flag that says this is our territory and this is a conservative state and we're going to deliver this state for Donald Trump. And by doing that, starting this year, hitting the ground running, we'll set the stage for a great and successful convention in 2020. Now the chairman's role of this party is to be a behind-the-scenes organizer and supporter. I'm a resourcer. I'm a guide and a resourcer. I'm not in it for, don't get in it for the glory or for time on the stage. My job is to make sure that all the resources that need to be poured into that convention get poured in. Now the RNC has a committee. Towers Mingledorff's running this operation, and they're going to have a great team and lots of money being spent in the Charlotte area. They've got a lot of tasks that they're performing internally. My job is to surround them with the volunteers they needed, 10,000 or so volunteers, and to make sure that they've got all the complementary services that we can provide to make it an absolute success. Whether it's working with the Charlotte, Mecklenburg security, or whether it's working in transportation networks with DOT around the state to make sure that everything is supported, that people get in and out and people can have a great time at the convention and that it will be a huge success. Our job is to complement the RNC and to make sure this thing goes off without a hitch. and to make sure that everyone gets in here alive and well, gets out of here alive and well, has a great time, does a lot of shopping and spends a lot of money in North Carolina. And then when they go out of here, Donald Trump is riding out of here with a great wave of victory, which will translate not only to a state victory in 2020, but also a national victory. That's what we got to do in Charlotte, and that's what I'm going to be doing to make sure all of that happens.
Next question is about strengths and weaknesses. God has made us all different. Mr. Womack, we'll start with you. What is your strongest asset you bring to this position, and how will you use it to elect Republicans in 2020?
Well, my strongest asset is my faith in Jesus Christ. With that love of the Lord and the knowledge of Judeo-Christian principles and the teachings of particularly of the New Testament and the Holy Bible, those things arm you for any challenge you may have in your life. My faith transcends any challenge or complication I have. I'm a Matthew 5:16 kind of Christian. I believe in letting our light shine, and that we don't win over people to our way of thinking and our way of life by simply being tyrannical or mean or elitist. Our job is to surround ourselves with people who are intelligent and calm and deliberative in all that they do, and that stand firm on biblical values. Those things are my greatest strength. Now, how it helps the party is, we've got a brand problem. We're looked at as a bunch of tired old white guys. That's what people think of as elitists. And that's not the Republican Party that I know and love. The Republican Party I know is a party of all the people, a party of color, a party of both genders, a party that believes in traditional American values, a party that is designed around the framers' intent for the country. The framers didn't create parties. They created a governance structure, and what we did is we created parties. And those parties have evolved, and they've merged and migrated. And if you think about where the Democrats are today, they're not the party of the Bible. They're not like that. And we need to be people of the book. We need to be people who believe what we're taught in the Bible and that espouse those views and let that light shine throughout the community and throughout the country. That's what will bring people into the Republican Party, and that's what will bring victory. Because people want to know that you stand that way. If you listen to Rush Limbaugh, listen to what he says sometimes. He says, don't be ashamed of your values. Stand firm on your conservative principles. People will respect that. They'll follow you if you do that. Everybody's worried about compromising and trying to be like, trying to be more accommodating to liberal values or leftist values. I say no. Stand firm on what you believe and let that be your guide, because I got to tell you, that's the kind of leadership people will follow. And that's the kind of stuff that wins elections. Because this country, you think about Ronald Reagan and what kind of a movement what came out of the Reagan administration, a former Democrat. And the power of his firm belief in God and the power of him standing firm on his principles even won over a Democrat-dominated House of Representatives, got a lot done. And you look at what Donald Trump's doing today, the first president that I can remember that actually was willing to move the capital of Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that stands firm on Christian principles. I'm going to tell you, that's the kind of leadership we need in this party. That's the kind of leadership that will win elections, and that's the kind of leadership that will win in 2020.
So I've been a Republican activist in North Carolina for 35 years. I started in 1984 as a sophomore at Watauga High School up in Boone. I had a classmate of mine come up and said, hey, I saw a Jesse Helms sticker on your locker. How'd you like to be the vice chair for the Watauga County Young Republicans? I asked him, what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to put out yard signs, we're going to have phone banks, we're going to go knock on doors, and we're going to do everything we can to support Jesse Helms and Ronald Reagan in his reelect. I said, man, that's awesome. How many people we got? 2 now. I was on the Florida recount team for President George W. Bush before he was president. I was on that legal team in Broward County. We protected that 537 vote margin. I have been in the trenches on recounts and understand election law and how you have to protect those margins to have us win elections. I served as Elizabeth Dole's chief of staff. It was a great thing to go from being an intern with Senator Helms to being a chief of staff for Senator Elizabeth Dole and realize that the elections that we fight so hard for down here matter in terms of people going to D.C. and serving North Carolina or going to Raleigh and serving their districts. I've been a county vice chair in Gaston County. John Torbett was the chairman when I was the vice chair. And in 2015, when I got a call from a friend outside of Trump Tower saying, hey, is there any chance that we could get you to help North Carolina and Donald Trump in North Carolina, I said yes. Right? Throughout that course of that cycle, we had a lot of different duties. We had a lot of different things that we were doing. I'll never forget the day where I got a call that said, hey, do you know anything about how to run a rally? I said, sure, I can run a rally. Great, we're going to bring Donald Trump down to Greensboro next week. Is there any chance you can find a venue? We found that venue at the annex for the Greensboro Coliseum. We posted that event where we put it online and started accepting people getting tickets on a Sunday evening. 72 hours later, 12,500 people showed up for a 6,000-seat arena. After 9,000 of them got in the arena, the fire marshal came over and he said, hey, we got to close the doors. So that's okay, we're good. We coined a new phrase that night. We got fire marshal. And we tried with every rally we had to fire marshal ourselves, to get fire marshal, right? 25 rallies over the course of that cycle. 17 with Donald Trump, 8 with Mike Pence. By our count, 285,000 individuals that came to those rallies, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, people who'd never voted in their lives. I stood up for Donald Trump in 2016. I was ready to join in that campaign again in 2020 until we had the implosion at the party. And I'm ready to stand up and be a leader there. And I will work with Donald Trump. I will work with our Senate candidates. I will work with our governor's candidates, work with the judicial candidates, and make sure that we are going into Election Day as strong as we can possibly be. Thank you.
Mr. Watley, next question. What is your weakest asset and how will you correct any disadvantage it may present as state party chairman?
Sure. So my weakest asset is this. I am one person, right? And I think everybody who gets into the chairmanship is going to think that they can handle everything that comes up to it. I have a very hard time saying no. I have an occasion, a difficulty in terms of being able to hand things over and do management instead of being a doer, right? But when we look at the magnitude of this election cycle, the way you overcome that is by having an executive director that you can work with, having a professional staff that you can work with, that you can delegate to, and you focus on those metrics and you make sure that you're hitting your marks. As a party, we have the Central Committee. We have the Executive Committee. We have 13 different congressional chairs. We have 100 different county chairs, right? This is not about the chairman being the CEO and having a bunch of minions. This is about being the chair of the board. I'm actually on 2 different nonprofit boards. I actually, as I work with a nonprofit that has a board. I'm a member of the vestry at my church, which is essentially a nonprofit board. I understand that as a member of that board, as a leader of that board, you have obligations to work with folks who are going to make decisions, right? We need to be more inclusive. We cannot have an autocrat at the top of the party, right? It is going to be absolutely essential for us to work with the RNC. I have great relationships there. To work with the Trump campaign, I have great relationships there. And we're going to have more work than we can possibly do. But I know that we can get this done with the right staff and with the right relationships in the Executive Committee, the Central Committee, the district chairs, and the county chairs.
Okay, I think perhaps my biggest weakness is the fact that and I'm taught not to hate, but I really dislike Democrats. and I mean this with all sincerity. I really, it's not that I don't like the people, because I do love the people. I actually have Democrats that are in my headquarters almost every day down in Lee County, because we have a black church that meets there. Most of them are Democrats, and we have a Latin Bible study that comes in there on Sunday afternoons, and a lot of them are Democrats. And we have a lot of panhandlers downtown Sanford, North Carolina, and a lot of them are Democrats. And in fact, there's just too doggone many Democrats in Lee County. The truth is that it's not the people I don't like. I love the people, but the values that they ascribe to just are so anathema to me that I it's hard not to hate that, because if you draw a contrast between the Democrat Party and our party, It's stark differences, folks. Stark differences, and I think a lot of the reason I get so angry at it is the fact that people are blind to the fact. If you look at where Democrats today will let babies die on tables. You know, they'll protect a new litter of puppies with the last breath of their life, but they'll let a baby die. You know, taking away, suppressing free speech on college campuses. You know, there's nothing that makes me madder than to watch some young conservative want to stand on a soapbox or sit at a table and say, change my mind, and then have some leftist come up and slap the sign out of their hand or assault them physically and get away with it. It's hard not to hate that. So what you do is you hate the behavior, but you don't hate the individual. You gotta show them that there's a better way, and that's a weakness, but it's something we all have to practice at, because it comes across in social media. It comes across in our speech, sometimes referred to as hate speech, and we just have to be careful of it. And I'm a work in progress, because I used to run a blog, and I used to really get hot and heavy and on Democrat and leftist values. But we just got to remember that sometimes these people, they just don't know any better, and we have to bring them around to our way of life and our way of thinking.
I have one more question, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Jane. Mr. Wilmette, what is your opponent's best attribute?
Well, that's easy. He's a very likable fellow. In fact, both of my opponents are very likable. One of them's just not here to like all tonight. Look, Michael and I still consider Michael a friend, even though that we're running some very competitive races right now. And he's got a lot of connections that would be of great value to this party. And I hope to capitalize on them as the party chairman. I hope he's going to stay active in the party. And down in Gaston County, he's got a lot of talent, a lot of connections that would be very useful to the party. And he's got a knack for raising funds. If you don't believe me, go look at the FEC reports. When he was working in D.C., he was moving millions of dollars around, and he's pretty good at that. So he's a very likable guy. He's very talented. He's very articulate. I can't say enough about Michael. He's a really good guy, and I hope we're going to be good friends after the race is over. I could go on for half an hour about all of his talents, but he is a very likable fella. He's very good and very convincing. I just hope he's not too convincing with a lot of you in here tonight. Because I still count him as a friend, but I think I'd be a much better leader for the party, because I've got the skill set and the talent, the leadership experience, the combat experience, and the full-time chairman capability to do that. But he is a very likable fellow.
And I would say this about Jim. I've actually said it in hundreds of different conversations around the states. I think that Jim is a true grassroots warrior. I think that he has an understanding and appreciation of the base of this party, and I think that he has an ability to work there. I think that his understanding of the fact that we have got to have folks out there working at polls, working in early vote, putting out yard signs, making phone calls, and knocking on doors, and I truly appreciate that. I agree with him on every single aspect of the importance of that side of the party. I mean, that's the party where I came out of. Started door knocking, started phone calls 35 years ago. And I think that when you look around the party, we have a tendency to say that we have the base guys and the elitists, or we have the establishment guys and the crazies, depending on which way you look at it. And we absolutely can't do that. So I think that when I look at what the energy level that Jim has brought, I think that the love that he has for this party and that he has for this state, I think are very significant. I absolutely applaud his military service. I think that is worthy of being recognized. And so I think that if I'm the chair, I've told any number of people this, Jim will be the first person that I will call. Because I think that we have got to have in the party, and I truly appreciate the base and where they come from, but I also appreciate the fact that we have got to finance this election cycle we have 11 million people in this state, 6 million plus registered voters that we're going to have to be communicating with across the presidential race, the Senate race, the governor's race, the judicial races, that we have got to be able to marry those two sides of the party. I think Jim can help with that, and I look forward to working with him as we move forward as well.
Thank you. And that concludes my questions, and I appreciate you taking the time and answering them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, actually, the first question is for both of you, and will you just keep track of who's going first?
Sure.
So, okay, I combined two questions because they're very similar. As you are aware, the state party brand has been tarnished. The indictments weigh heavily on the minds of voters and will most likely be used against all Republicans by Democrats in 2020. How will you rebuild the brand and win for all Republicans from top to bottom and defend our name against attacks by Democrats related to the stain on the North Carolina Republicans? And the other part of this is we missed a huge chance to grow our party in 2016 with Trump voters that don't identify as Republicans. How will you address this?
So let me start with the ethics issues, right? Simply put, we need a reset in Raleigh. We need party leadership that's focused on honesty, transparency, communications, and metrics. We have a lot of work to do in this election cycle. I think one of the most important things that we look at is this election is going to take place on June 8th. We have lost 6 months out of a 24-month election cycle where the Democrats have been raising money, tens of millions of dollars, that they're going to be spending in this state. So it is going to be absolutely imperative for us as a party coming out of this election to pull in every aspect of the party, every group in the party, and be able to focus on the issues of building blocks that we need going forward. Now, I mentioned earlier that we need that infrastructure. We're going to need an early vote program going forward. We're going to need the judicial program to be able to raise the additional money that we need for our Supreme Court, our Court of Appeals. We're going to have to be able to have recruiting and training of those volunteers. Now, from a messaging standpoint, I think it's absolutely critical that we have a very disciplined message and communications plan, that we don't just say, oh, look, there's a 24-hour news cycle and the president said something or AOC said something stupid, we need to go respond. Our responses, our activity in the media have to be very disciplined. They have to be very focused, metric-driven from election day all the way back, and we have to stay on message. I think that's going to be absolutely critical. And of course, as we raise money for the party, we have to do it ethically. We have to follow the law. And we've got to be able to say that that was something that was an anomaly. It did not, and at this point, the party has not been, implicated. But those were party checking accounts that money moved through, and there are issues there. And I think we have got to be above board, keep our nose clean. Now, when you talk about bringing in new voters, one of the things that we did at those rallies with those 285,000 people, at every single event, the mile-long lines outside were very rich. So we put volunteers out there with clipboards and voter registration forms. And they'd walk out there and say, are you registered to vote? Yes. Are you registered to vote? Yes. Are you registered to vote? No. Oh, hey, let's get you signed up. So there was an opportunity for us to register those voters. Now, we need to keep them, right? The other thing is that in the 2016 cycle, the RNC spent a significant amount of money building up victory centers across the state. And then after the election, they patted those guys on the back and said, great job, see you later. Right? We need to take this 2020 cycle and all of the investment that's going to come into this state and make those gains permanent and make that infrastructure permanent and make sure that we have a permanent presence going forward, because then we're going to have the 22 cycle and then we're going to have the 24 cycle, and we need to take the investments that we'll get in this state now and make those gains permanent.
Okay, two parts to the question. First is about rebuilding the brand. I talked a lot about that earlier. We got to brand this party correctly. We got to make sure that our message is about our adherence to traditional American values and also being a party of inclusion. so that we're a party that's diverse and that we represent the fabric of the community. So we need a better minority outreach program. We need a better Latin outreach program in particular. And we've started doing some of this in Lee County, and we're going to take that on the state level. In the back of the room, you'll see some pamphlets that I have to hand out that we use in Lee County. Make Black America Great Again. You'll also see a biblical values flyer that I have back there that I created. Stole that idea from Franklin Graham. It's a great idea. We've converted a lot of Democrats to Republicans just by messaging with them. Republicans need to know about that stuff as well. A lot of them don't understand what our party platform's about. And so we got to do a better job of communicating the tenets of our party platform, because it's something you can believe in, you can sink your teeth in. When we rebuild that brand and communicate that effectively in social media, I'm a social media guru. I get out, I got accounts on every kind of thing. I got Pinterest, I got Instagram, I got Twitter, I do it all. And that's a talent you need in your chairman and in the community and in the headquarters as well. And then reaching out in all those channels to reach all those different demographics that we have to reach. We need to be in Black urban radio and communicating there in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area, the Wake County and Guilford County areas where there's a lot of Black listeners that don't do social media. We got to reach them with our message and our brand. Now, the other thing we need to do for the donations and the fundraising, we've got to get fiscal controls put in place and enforced. Folks, the reason Robin Hayes got in trouble was because we weren't following our own rules. And there wasn't fiscal controls in place. I will make sure those controls are in place on day one. June the 10th, when I report to work, there will be fiscal controls in place. And the donors now can understand that we are going to stand by our plan of organization and the controls that we say we're going to have, whether it's with audits or whether it's periodic financial reviews. We're going to make sure the executive committee and the central committee of the party both are kept fully apprised of what we're doing. That's a part of that trust factor that goes in so people will believe in you and give money to you. Now, the Trump voters. Donald Trump brought 80,000 new Republicans into the party from March until November of 2016. 80,000. And since that time, we've lost 20,000. And it's not because Donald Trump wasn't doing his job. It's because we haven't done the job of communicating to people who we are. And we got to take charge of the education and healthcare messaging. We're terrible at that right now. We got to fix that. I'm going to do that now. We're working on those messages, on those keywords, and on those things that resonate with people. Those messages, and then we're going to continue to emphasize life and liberty, Second Amendment, those things which are strong suits for the Republican Party. Building that brand, building that trust back. That's what we got to do to win over the Trump voters.
Jane, can I use one of my rebuttals here?
Sure.
Excellent. So I think it's very important that we look at what has taken place in the party and where we are as a party moving forward. It is appalling to me that our party plan of organization calls for an annual audit, and that for the last 3 years we have had members of the Central Committee who have actually called for an audit, and they've been shut down.
That's
right? And I will tell you, the first thing that I will do on Sunday at the Executive Committee, if I'm elected as chairman, is going to demand that we are going to conduct an audit. Now, I think that obviously the financial side of that audit is going to be very important. But I also think that we need to have a review, an internal review. 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, we'll have to see where it is. But where are we as a party in terms of our infrastructure? Where are we in terms of our communications? Where are we in terms of all of the different aspects that we need? We do not have a social media program in place right now. We're not communicating out as a party, right? Why not? We need to make sure that we have honesty, transparency, communications, and metrics in all the things that we're doing. And I think that the transparency piece is particularly important when we're talking about the Central Committee and the Executive Committee, right? The chair and the staff have a duty to provide information to the members of the Executive Committee and the Central Committee on demand and on request. And we have the duty to be able to hold those Central Committee meetings and get people in there and make sure that they're getting the answers to the questions that they need. And when we get our own house in order internally, and then we can start communicating out to the party on a regular basis. This is what the president's message is. This is what our leadership in the House and Senate are saying. This is what Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest is saying. Then we can package all that up into North Carolinian, and we can get that out to the county chairs, to the district chairs, to the auxiliary groups, and the other members of the party via social media, and make sure that they're amplifying those messages and we will be able to draw clear distinctions with where we are as a party of ethics versus the Democrats, and that's going to be terribly important as well. Thank you.
Okay, some of these questions are directed to either you or Jim. And this one is for you, Michael. You have talked about fundraising and big money donors and rallying the donor class for big contributions going into 2020. You also say we need to reset Raleigh. Isn't courting big money over grassroots what got the party into this mess to begin with? And the second part of that is, how does being a lobbyist qualify you to run a state political party and win in 2020?
I appreciate the question. I will say this first. I'm actually not a lobbyist. I have been a registered lobbyist in the past, but I am not right now. And what I would say is this, that in terms of the donor class, I think it's very important to have a donor class. I think that the donations that those folks put into the party are very critical, right? And Republican parties have those all across the nation. Democratic parties have those all across the nation. The key is you can't be dependent on those folks. We have got to have a small dollar program, and we have to have events that we're going to be doing on a regular basis to bring in the business class and have them there so that those high dollar donors are a part of what we're doing. Because if they are the only part of your finance team, then you are going to be dependent on them. And obviously we need to make sure that all of the transactions that take place are going to be not just legal, but also ethical, right? So I think in terms of my advocacy background, what I will say is this. We do, at my firm, HBW Resources, we do community outreach. We do public affairs. We help major energy companies work on major energy projects so that they can get state, local, federal permits, community buy-in for those types of projects. I spent significant time on the ground out in places like Nebraska, working on the Keystone XL pipeline. I spent significant amount of time working on offshore energy production, right? The opportunities that I have had to wake up every morning and argue for economic development, for job creation in the United States, for lower energy prices for American energy consumers. I am very proud of my work in that space. And the fact that it has put me in touch with, folks from the House of Representatives, Congress, the administration, and state folks all across the country are going to help me because I have those relationships, and to be able to bring those relationships back to bear and help North Carolina with our party.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, did you want to respond?
No.
Okay. All right. This is for both of you.
Oh.
Would each of you describe your current expertise in social media? Needless to say, it has not been a strength of our NCGOP and has been proven to not have a good outcome.
Well, I thank whoever submitted that question. That sounds like a softball. Look, I've been practicing social media ever since these institutions or these platforms emerged. I'm a big believer in social media. I've been a Facebook warrior for a while. I started blogging and that sort of thing on WordPress years ago, but then I migrated to Facebook, and as most over 50 folks are, we kind of dwell on that. We spend a lot of time doing things other than sharing cat videos and dog videos. We actually do a lot of political messaging on social media, and I think that's where the Dan Forest campaign spends a lot of his advertising money is in that platform because it's very effective. I've conferred with Hal Weatherman extensively over the last 8 years working on his campaign and learning what they do because it's instrumental in getting him elected twice as lieutenant governor, and it's going to be a platform he uses very effectively in getting elected as governor next year. I use Instagram for a lot of sharing of videos and high-grade photography with messaging. I believe in YouTube in a big way. That's where a lot of the post-millennial generation is right now. They're on YouTube and they're following it, and it's satire and it's comedy, but it's also subtle messaging, and we can use YouTube much more effectively in the party. I use Pinterest to follow things that I like. Use Twitter to help drive the news cycle and retweeting our great president, Donald Trump. I like to follow what he's doing, and it's pretty timely when you follow him on Twitter. And believe me, the media is paying attention. So I like to retweet a lot of what he does to share that around with people, and then I follow a lot of the other GOP people in the state and a lot of the Republican clubs, the college Republicans and 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 some of the women's clubs have Twitter accounts. I like to follow what they're doing, and that's a very effective platform for that. One of our congressmen actually uses YouTube as a platform to share messaging, the congressional messaging, because he puts little videos in there and then has like messaging right underneath it, similar to what you do with email. Folks, we're not doing that today. We're not doing it in the party. And it's a shame, because there's so much value that we can get out of social media. And it's an unexploited platform. Folks, it's cheap. I mean, you can run a YouTube ad, a Facebook ad for $3, and you can reach 1,000 people. It's stuff that the party has just not exploited. It's something I'm really good at. I can get better, I'm sure. I mean, my daughter, who's a junior at UNC Charlotte, teaches me stuff all the time. but I promise you, I listen to these young folks that are talking about social media and how to use it more effectively, and I think we've just got to do that. Our communications director, starting on June the 10th, our communications director is going to spend an enormous amount of time in social media. We are going to use that platform. We're going to be better at it than the Democrats. The other thing I'll tell you is we got a lot of social media warriors all across the state. We're just not using them. I intend to enlist them into the army of social media for the Republican Party of North Carolina.
So, with the advocacy campaigns that I've been running over the last several years, a very significant part of that is the communications plan. And a very significant part of your communications plan is social media. So we have extensive experience through our firm in being able to work with the social media platforms to be able to make sure that we are getting the messages out and we are hitting our targets. When we talk about what that means politically, we go back to the fact that yes, we have a 24-hour news cycle. And yes, there are going to be occasions where we need to engage in the 24-hour media cycle. And that can be through Twitter, that can be through Facebook, that can be through other channels. But what we need to be doing as a party is allowing the candidates to be speaking for themselves on their proactive, positive messaging. And then we need to understand what is the role of the party in terms of the communications that we're going forward. So there's an offensive component to that. There's a defensive component to that. When you talk about offense, you talk about the fact that we have a Democratic governor. You talk about the fact that we are going to have a Democratic nominee for president. And we need to make sure that the messages that the candidates cannot put out in terms of taking the wood to those guys and hitting them in the shins with it are what the party is going to be delivering in terms of those messages, right? So we're going to go negative as a party on certain candidates when it's called for as part of a strategic communication plan. And then we're going to have positive messages that are going to go out. And again, right, we will get messaging and communications points from the White House, from the Trump campaign, from the legislature, from our governor's campaign and Senate campaigns, right? And we're going to be able to synthesize those and be able to use all of the different channels to get those out. But there is going to be a set number of talking points that we have got to communicate, and it takes 6 to 7 contacts with every voter for them to be able to remember a message. So segment them out, make sure that we're communicating on a regular basis, and then work back through the metrics that we're going to need and have that. Now, we need a communications director. We need a social media campaign guy, right? And we're also going to have our digital folks on the teams, right? We're going to have different things that are functioning. Now, as a chairman, I think it's going to be important for you to be the voice that's going to be on the social media out there, but it has to, again, be part of a constructive, well-coordinated, strategic communications plan, not just playing in the 24-hour cycle.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the next couple of questions are for Jim. You did not support President Trump in the Republican primary. Why? And do you support him now, and what changed your mind?
Right, okay, so back in March of 2016, I was not a Trump supporter. Actually, I was more of a Ted Cruz supporter and a Ben Carson supporter at the time. Still, things hadn't sorted out. I didn't know enough about Donald Trump. I didn't watch The Apprentice. I apologize. I was not a huge fan of his from years past. I knew a lot about his history, and I wasn't a real fan of his at the time. And I was judging him at the time based on the talent and the expertise he had. And I had a lot of other folks that I thought were more constitutional conservatives, because that's my ideology. Not long after the primary, and after talking to actually a lot of Democrat Trump voters and supporters, and my sheriff in Lee County, he says, "You know who Trump reminds me of?" I said, "No." He says, "You." And I said, "Oh, no." He said, "No, you guys are a lot alike." he watched him a lot, and he knew a lot of what he did. And I'm not in his league, but I can tell you that I came around to the Trump brand very quickly. It was by about March or April. I'm sorry, about April or May. After I watched him closely, after he won the primary, I watched him closely in North Carolina. I just said, this guy's for real. He really means what he says. You can tell the fire in his belly and the passion in his heart. And so nobody worked harder for Donald Trump in 2016 than I did after that period. My wife and I put signs out till our hands bled for Donald Trump. I mean, we were out working after midnight at night putting signs out. I had to drive almost 45 miles just to go pick up signs of his over an overpass in Harnett County. That's where I had to, we really had to work for him, and we did. And we loved him all the way through the fall primary. But my main objection to Trump at the time was because of the way he talked cavalierly about the military. And he doesn't act like that now. But I was afraid. I had a daughter that was headed to West Point at the time. And she was due to graduate. She would be graduating in 2020 if she had stayed there. But I was concerned, being a West Point graduate, I was concerned that my daughter was going to go into combat with a cavalier commander-in-chief. And that was my main concern. Now, he won me over in just a couple of months. And I got to tell you, there's nobody that supports our president. I wear the pin proudly. No one supports our president more than I do now. No one has supported him. I got a Trump store in my headquarters, folks. I sell Trump items all the time. I learned from the master. I've read The Art of the Deal. I know a lot about him, and I admire a lot about him. In fact, I consider Donald Trump to be the greatest American president in history. I really do. Because he's done things that no one else would dare to do. And he's been a great leader. He moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. He's defended our allies. He's called our NATO partners to task to do things nobody would do. But Donald Trump did it because he's a great businessman and a great leader, and I admire the guy. I'm not like him really, but I admire him greatly, and I think that he's been a magnificent president. So, I was ashamed at one time to call myself a Trump fan, but I'm not anymore.
Thank you. And just to let you know, we didn't support him either during the primary, and one of the reasons why I didn't was because I live in the same neighborhood with the guy. He supported Hillary and Chuckle Schumer, and I've even got him on video saying that he thought Planned Parenthood was the best thing since sliced bread. He scared the daylights out of us. And we said, oh my God, what are we going to get in the White House? We quickly changed our mind after the primary because we could see the direction he was moving, and we could not vote for Hillary. And let me tell you, we are huge Trump fans. We've got his hats over there, and we can't wait to get him reelected. So thank you, Jim. Okay. All right, the next question is, Jim, you are currently chair of the North Carolina Oil and Gas Commission. This is an obvious conflict of interest. How do you intend to deal with that conflict?
Okay, I would disagree to a degree with the question. I can see where somebody might perceive being a chairman of an oil and gas commission would be a conflict of interest, but the chairman of the commission of the state is a chairman of a regulatory body. We represent the people of North Carolina. We don't represent, and it's not partisan. We represent the people of North Carolina, making sure that safe and effective drilling is done if it ever occurs in the state. I'm the chairman of that commission, have been off and on for the last 6 years, and but I'm a regulator. I'm not a lobbyist or an oil and gas advocate per se. I'm a guy to make sure that anything that we do in this state, what people refer to as hydrofracking, that is done safely and effectively, and it does not damage the environment or hurt people. Now, it is my intent that immediately after I get elected chairman of the party, that I will resign as the chairman of the commission and actually submit to Phil Berger, who appointed me to the commission, to replace me, because the job of this party is to be a full-time chairman, and that means no conflicts, none. And I fully intend to commit 60 to 80 hours a week working for this party. My wife knows when I dive into a task, I do it full bore. And you can't do that. I can't weigh or have to make compromises on what I do for the Republican Party at the same time that I'm trying to do the right thing as the chairman of the Oil and Gas Commission. So I'll resign from the commission and let some other wonderful citizen come into that non-paying job, and they'll enjoy that and being beat up by environmentalists. So But no, I love this party, and I will not have that conflict because I will immediately resign that position. And there will be no conflicts whatsoever with what I do for the Republican Party.
Thank you. Right. This is for both of you, and it has to do, it's really important with candidates, okay, supporting them. We had a candidate that was a Republican candidate for District 116 this past election in 2018. The caucus had told her that she would be supported all the way to the end. Then was told a month before the election that they didn't have the money to run the commercial, which they had already filmed in August. What will you do to ensure this doesn't happen to future House and Senate candidates who put everything on the line, worked hard for months, only to have the rug pulled out from under them at the end? And this also hurts the brand of the Republican Party, and we lose faith. So what will you do? Michael?
Sure. So, and I think that's not just an isolated example of where we've seen that. And I'll go back to the 2016 cycle when Buck Newton was moving forward with the Attorney General's race, and he had assurances from groups that there was going to be money that got brought into the race, and then the money was not brought into the race. He ended up getting outspent 8-1, right? And talk about what happened with Barbara Jackson in her race as well. That, look, the state party is not necessarily going to be in a position to write a check to cover any shortfalls from these candidates and from these caucuses. But I think it's very important to make sure throughout the cycle, not just in the last 6 weeks, that we are working with the House caucus, the Senate caucus, to make sure that they have the resources that they need so that we don't have examples like this. And then I also think it's important as the chair that when you have a candidate come to you like Barbara Jackson or like Buck Newton and say, hey, I have a tremendous shortfall. All right, fine, let me figure out how we're going to fix this. Let me work with you to see how we're going to do this. What groups can we get in touch with nationally? What groups can we get in touch with across the state to be able to bring those resources into the campaign, even if it's last minute, right? To be able to help make sure that we don't have these situations. But the biggest thing that we've got to do is make sure that 2 years out, 18 months out, 12 months out, 6 months out, that we are working on hitting our metrics to make sure that the fundraising is in place, to make sure that we have the resources for that, right? And that we have the ability to bring those resources to bear on election day and not leave these candidates hanging.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular race, but I can tell you I've heard similar stories from around the state. Again, some of it stemmed from just bad strategic planning where we tried to put a candidate on every race, even in unwinnable districts around the state. And I just got to tell you, if someone wants to run on those races, I think that's great. But in the case where they do, and it's not one that we've actually built into the strategic plan, they need to be aware that there could be a fundraising shortfall. I hope that wasn't the case here. Folks, I'm a strategic planner. The Army certified me as a JOPS planner, moving men and equipment to combat and back. And I take that stuff very seriously. Everything we do in the Republican Party should be run like a business or like a military campaign. It should be goal-directed. And so if we've got a number of candidates that are running for office, we know essentially what needs to be budgeted for those candidates. We can collaborate, and we do, because the caucus treasurers actually sit in the Republican headquarters downstairs. They have offices there. It's easy for us to do face-to-face collaboration on the funding that they have available and the funding they don't have. Everything we do ought to be goal-directed, so we know how much money we have to raise every month all the way to the end of the election cycle. And that's a pipeline, folks. That's what we call a pipeline in business and industry. And that pipeline has got to be met. We have a number of folks that are committed to fundraising. We have a fundraising chief and a fundraising committee. We have the chairman of the party that's the chief fundraiser. Everything we've got is going to be matched to that goal, those goals that we set for strategic planning and fundraising. And we're going to then go out and raise the money we need. In fact, we will exceed those dollars, and then we'll be able to throw money to unexpected requirements in those races. Everybody has things that come up at the last minute that they didn't anticipate, where they got to put out a fire and do a fire drill. And we need to be able to have that surge capacity to put money where we can win a key race with some money invested either in urban radio or in social media or in mailers or whatever. So folks, I mean, what we've done in the past, we rely on mailers and a few TV ads, and we hope that we're going to win these races. And that's not what does it. What does it is directed activity and complete planning in all the mediums that we have, and then raising the funds that we have to do, that we need in order to win those races. And I'm committed to doing that. I don't think that there should be anything left where people get caught short at the tail end of the campaign.
You actually answered the following question, which was, you made a career in the military as a combat leader and as an IT executive, and so how does that help you to win in 2020? How does it help
Okay,
the state?
well, let me just wrap up what I was just saying. You know, the one thing that you do in the Army is you learn how to train and educate the workforce so that they can win in war, okay? And that's when people's lives are on the line. So you take it very, very seriously, and you train year round. You know, we got a guy who's a candidate to be the chairman of the DCCA here tonight, the training and education arm of the party, and he's a military guy. He served side by side with me in Desert Storm. You know, we know what it's like to take soldiers to combat and bring them back. And I got to tell you, that's the kind of attitude we need in the leader of the party. We need someone who's run a military campaign, someone who knows what it's like to have to surge, to go 24 hours a day, round the clock in an operation where you leave no man behind. That everyone that you've committed to getting across the finish line and winning the race, that you're going to get them there. And you're going to make sure the resources are synchronized to do that, whether it's training the force, or whether it's logistics or common infrastructure for everybody to use, or whether it's a communications strategy, intelligence gathering on the enemy. I mean, all of those things relate to what we do in political campaigns. It's very much like military campaigns. And that's kind of what we really need is, not kind of, it's exactly what we need is the state party chairman, someone who knows how to run a military campaign where lives are on the line. And then secondly, as an IT executive, you know, the party has got a lot of very smart people in IT and social media. We got incredible talent in the party, we've just never used it because they've never migrated to the top and served in the headquarters. But we're going to do that. We're going to tap the party. We're going to have a core of IT experts. You got one right here, Jordan Bowman. This guy's a social media maven. I mean, the guy's incredible with what he does in branding and messaging and communicating. And that's the kind of talent we need in the party. We need to exercise that talent in every district. There ought to be a social media director in every one of the 13 congressional districts. And it ought to be a part of our plan of organization. And so these are things that you see that are deficiencies in the party that you know we have to take advantage of in the future to win. The Democrats are doing it now. I mean, they're just not as good at it as we can be, and we just haven't exploited it. So those are some things. IT executive helps me understand application software, data management, so that we know how to build applications, how to build application software, or to empower you as business users to go door to door and to run successful campaigns. That's the IT part. The military campaign is synchronizing resources and training and educating the workforce, and we're going to do that. You know, come to my suite at convention down in Concord on June the 7th and 8th. You'll learn more about what we're doing in IT and in training and education and in building synchronized campaigns. Come see Roger's tables, my table in that suite. You're gonna enjoy it. You'll learn a lot more about what we can do as a party. We're only limited by our creativity and our resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have to get to the vice chair. I will get it up and on social media so everyone can see it, and we will send it to these wonderful candidates. Okay, your turn. Okay, this is for all of you. Why do you want to serve as the vice chair for the NCGOP? I guess we can start with Sarah.
Can you go back to the mic, please, because we want to hear them as well as the other people.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
So the question was, why do I want to serve as vice chair of NCGOP? First of all, my name is Sarah Reedy Jones. I'm currently the vice chair of Mecklenburg County Republican Party. If I can survive in Mecklenburg, I can survive anywhere. Hero Street to Main Street, you name it. And previously, I was also vice chair of Guilford County Republican Party. So I bring 5 years of being vice chair to the third and first largest counties in the state. So I understand operationally what it takes to work in the county, work as vice chair. I understand what it takes to network with fellow vice chairs. I understand my background is media and communications. I think we need that. I do rebranding and messaging for a living. We need that. I am a working woman We need that in the party. We need somebody that's identifiable to people. And so that's why I'm getting into this race. You know, I'm everything that the Republican Party shouldn't be. I'm young, I'm female, I'm from an urban core, I'm middle class. After this campaign, I'm lower middle class. Sorry to my husband in the back. And I'm frankly 1,000% more Native American than Elizabeth Warren. So I am something that the party doesn't have. We talk about we can't be the party of old white people anymore. So I think that that's so important that I understand. I have a historical knowledge of the party. Don't let my youthful face surprise you. I have 21 years of experience in the party. I started as a 17-year-old in the trenches. I got denied to start a teenage Republican club in my home city in Oklahoma. If it gets denied in Oklahoma, which is very conservative, that's telling to the stigma that we have against conservatives and against Republicans. So for the past 21 years, I have been in the trenches doing the party's work. You know, college Republicans, young Republicans, Women's Federation, every sort of auxiliary group out there. And I've seen what's worked and what's not worked, and I'm willing to take that on the chin as well. I understand the best practices for the party. I understand networking with each other. I understand having tangible plans, executable plans. I understand that it's important to be sitting behind a desk. I've been attacked for that, frankly. You know, we need to be able to sit behind a desk and articulate a message and work on what we're going to do before we rally the troops. We can sit behind a desk or we can sit behind a steering wheel, and frankly, sometimes sitting behind a desk is more productive. And we need more of that. We need somebody that's going to be calm and collective and be able to advocate and fight for our values. We are not the common enemy. The Democrats are the common enemy. And so I want to take that fight to Hillsborough Street. I want to take that fight to all 100 counties. I understand 100 counties. I understand that one party, one size does not fit all. So we have to localize better. I've been able to see that. Again, I've seen what works, what doesn't work. I've survived. I go to church with Jennifer Roberts, the former mayor of Charlotte. If I can do that, I can believe in forgiveness for anybody. So I am excited. This is something that wasn't expected, but it's something that when you have talent, you're called to duty. So thank you.
My name is Anne Marie Yates, and I'm from Watauga County. I want to be your next vice chair because I am a passionate conservative. I have been working in this party for a very long time. I served as two terms as the Watauga County chair. And if you know anything about Watauga County, we have Appalachian State University, and that's a very difficult fence to get over. I have worked in the party at the state level as your assistant secretary, where I've been able to, I didn't have a voice in the Central Committee because that's the way it's set up. But that gave me the opportunity to sit and listen to the things that are working good in the party, which are many. There are many things that are good in our party, and the things that need to be worked on. So I have been able to listen and glean information and form some ideas about what needs to be done. I've served as a precinct chair, and I understand the need to have more organizations at our local level. Many of our counties are not even organized. Many of our counties that are organized do not have the precinct support that they need. So that is another passion of mine. I've worked as a DCCA representative for the 5th District, and that's another arm of our party that needs to be used more effectively. A lot of times people don't have extra time. We need to use that arm of our party to educate through social media, through video networking, that sort of thing. So I am passionate about being your vice chair. I have been in this party for a very long time and worked at every level. I understand the need to work with the Central Committee, get everything approved through the Central Committee and the Executive Committee. I've been in those organizations for a very long time, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
I'm Miriam Chu, and I'm from Moore County. I'm currently the Vice President of Moore Republican Women, an 8th District at-large member, and a precinct chair in Moore County, and also a member of the Freedom Works National Activist Advisory Council. And what inspired me to run for vice chair was I have been involved in grassroots activism for nearly a decade now. And during that time, I've become extremely aware of just how often the people who are actually in the field doing the work, knocking on the doors, making phone calls, working the polls, feel that their will is ignored and that they need to have a voice in the upper management of the party. My primary background in life, I've worked in industrial management, and that made me aware and gave me relationships with people who were top-level executives as well as people who were actually working on the factory floor. And every one of them has a very important role to play and needed to be treated with respect and needed to be listened to. Those were where the ideas came from. When I wanted to know what was going on in a plant, why there were quality problems, I went out and I talked to the people who were actually doing the work. And that's where we found the solutions. And I brought the team members at the upper executive levels together with the management in the plant to solve the problems. And the problem-solving skills and the people skills, the team-building skills that I brought from my industrial management background are what I want to bring to the GOP. The ability to work with people at all levels to solve our mutual problems. I love the Republican Party, I love the Republican people, and we are all, at the end of the day, Republicans. But I know that it needs someone that has the time. I am retired and I am willing to travel to meet with people face to face, because that is how you build effective team relationships. The leaders that I have known in my life who were the most effective were the ones who went out and met with the people, who got in the trenches with the troops, and those were the ones who were the most loved and the respected. And that is what I want to do. I want to be someone who leads by example and learns to have a relationship with everybody within the party and treats everyone with respect, and we all get along, because at the end of the day, we're Republicans and our business is electing Republicans.
Miriam, we're going to start with you. And it relates to what you just said. In 2018, you backed a primary challenger over an incumbent in a state senate race in your district. Why did you do that, and how did you work with the incumbent once your candidate lost?
The people in Moore County has been the largest Republican county in the Senate district in which I reside. We were recently redistricted. And the people in Moore County felt that they needed to have their own state senator. And a local mayor stepped up and wanted to be that candidate. She lost her primary race. Following that primary, I sat down with the incumbent senator. We got to meet, got acquainted, and I learned who he was and what his strengths were. And I went on to back him during the general election and get everybody on board, and everyone who had previously supported the other candidate. I did my very best to get everyone in the county, the Tea Party and so forth, who had previously supported his opponent, to bring them on board, and we successfully elected him in 2018. He carried Moore County without any problem.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is for Anne-Marie. NCGOP chair requires a hefty time commitment and much travel. Where have you campaigned for NCGOP chair at conventions, GOP meetings, etc.?
Vice chair.
Vice chair? For vice chair?
Yeah.
I have been, I've not been in the race very long. I have worked throughout the state through networking with my supporters, people who live down on the coast, people who live in the center of the state have gone to events for me and been there for me. I have been personally in several counties and gone to small groups. I was just with a delightful bunch of folks down in Burke County on Friday morning at 7:30, and we had such a great discussion. I am committed. I own my own business, which only requires an internet connection to work, so I can travel anywhere in the state. I do feel like, being from a rural community, it's important for the North Carolina Republican Party to reach out to rural communities, because a lot of times when I was the chair, we never saw anybody from the state party up in Watauga County. And we started to wonder, what does the state party do for us? So it's important that we build those relationships. I feel like we need to use more of our affiliate groups. The Republican women are all over the state in big numbers, and those women can be a connection like no other. My campaign is young, and but my experience is long, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, now the next question is for Sarah Reedy Jones. You're a busy lady. How can you be vice chair of Mecklenburg GOP, hold down a full-time job, and I know you've got quite a hefty load there, and continue to be vice chair of the NCGOP? How do you do that?
Because I live on the fuel of liberal tears. That's what keeps me going. But honestly, some of the women that I know are the hardest working women. People like Leanne Patton, the newly elected 12th district chair down in Mecklenburg County. She owns her own business and she still gets it done. I have been very lucky in that I have an unlimited vacation policy at my company. I've been using that quite leniently lately. But I can get things done. We need to work smarter, not harder. I want to work with you all. I want to get out into the counties. I have a futon with my name on it at my brother's house in Raleigh. My 3-year-old and 6-year-old niece and nephew think I'm the coolest thing ever. So I love the opportunity to get there as much as possible and enjoy that. I will work tirelessly for you guys. That's what I continue to do. I think that what we do is we have an opportunity right now. One thing that we are getting, pardon my French, but we're getting our butts whipped in, is we are not recruiting working females to the party. The Democrats have been excellent at engaging working women. We have to have somebody that's relatable. What I can do is I can be in the counties and I can, you know what? This is an amazing office right here. It's amazing what we can do. I had a Zoom meeting with the head of Nation Builder talking about things to make things more interactive with Nation Builder to help you guys. I will be there nonstop. My husband can vouch. I do this nonstop. He's a college golf coach, so he's on the road a lot. This is just our new normal. But I love this, and I will work tirelessly. I continue to work tirelessly. I have the energy. I have the stamina. I have the network of working with people and those tools and those technologies to connect us better. We don't need to be wasting our time driving around when we can be doing things more efficiently. The party, we get stuck in this mantra, and this is part of why I'm running. You know, we do things because it's always been done before. And we cannot keep doing that because we are not winning. Last I checked, we are 3rd place in voter registration. So we have to do things differently. One of the things that I've been able to do very well is we have a lot of TV stations in Charlotte. We are able to, I can jump on there, be 10 minutes from the studio, articulate our values, and do that for the party. So we have to do better about being more efficient with our time, and we have to be better about being welcoming to people that might not feel related to. So we have to do things differently. So that's why I'm getting in this, and I promise to pledge to you nonstop energy and nonstop efficiency. Thank you.
So just to clarify, yes. You're going to continue in all of those other positions, the work and the NCGO and the vice chair?
As of right now, again, that's a conversation I would have to have with my board, with MEC GOP, should I get the opportunity to be elected chair of the state, or vice chair of the state.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, we'll start with Amory. Okay, what roles, if any, did you play in the successes or failures in your most recent local elections?
Okay, so in the most recent local elections, I was on the board of the executive committee for our county. I am serving as your assistant secretary, so I put all of my energy into that. But I go on campus and I stand and I hand out information. Unfortunately, we're not successful in Watauga County this year because of the college vote. And it was very discouraging. But I have fought that on other levels. During my time as the chair in Watauga County, I was successful in delivering Watauga County to Virginia Fox for the one and only time that that's ever happened. I was able to help get Jonathan Jordan reelected, and successfully we had 3 county commissioners. My husband being one of them, and he came from a Democrat district in our county, and he's the only one that served as a conservative commissioner, and so I was successful in that as well. I worked tirelessly on our executive committee, going around taking information to poll workers, getting poll workers organized. We have 9 precincts in our county, and so it was my job to keep everybody supplied with information during the campaign, during the early election, and then on election day. So I have been successful in 4 election cycles, and I continue to work very hard in Watauga County in the face of challenges.
Thank you. Miriam, same question. Want me to repeat it?
I think I remember. Well, I participated in the get out the vote activities, from recruiting volunteers, preparing voter guides, staffing polls, but also in voter registration drives at the local community college and at various community events. We also worked several street fairs. We participated in parades and everything else we could think of to raise our level of awareness within the community. And I'm a precinct chair, and I man polls, and we also, I think I already mentioned, preparing and handing out voter guides, and we mailed them out to our precinct members. I distributed them there in my own precinct. And in 2018, if you were a Republican and you were on the ballot in November, you won Moore County.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the elephant in the room, because I live in Mecklenburg County, which is very, 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 very blue. I understand that our trends are changing. We have, just in the city of Charlotte alone, 45 new people a day moving to Charlotte. Within the metro area, 120 people a day moving into the metro area. 58% of those are millennial or younger. So we have our challenges. What we did was we looked at running things in a 5-year plan. So my chair and I sat down and we ran things the traditional way our first year of being elected. So we did things and we knew what the results were going to be. They weren't great. So we spent this last year evaluating those results. I am a metrics person. I have a public policy background. I went to George Washington University. I love nerdy metrics. And so we evaluated that. One thing we also learned was we would go to big donors when we first got started, because there's a lot of money in the Charlotte area, but they're not giving it to the party here. They're giving it straight up to the RNC. So what we tried to do was go to these donors, and they said, well, why should we invest in you? You need to show us, because they're business people. And so we said, you know what, we have to write a strategic plan. We have to have these metrics. We have to have these plans in place. So we're going to them now, and we're in the middle of a $1.3 million ask now, because we've built that donor confidence. So what we have done was that first year, again, run things traditionally, knew the results weren't going to be great. We have to stop doing things the same way we've always done before. This past year, evaluate it. So we wrote a plan for the next 2 years. So the idea that the 5th year we'd hand off and have that concurrent strategic continual flow. This is a problem that happens around around everywhere, because you have 2-year terms. So historical knowledge gets rolled over. Everything happens differently. So we have to make things so it's long-term and hand off. So we have figured out some ways that have worked and not worked. So what we are doing in Mecklenburg alone is localizing. We have started like Mint Hill Matthews Republican Club, which is a suburban club. They recognize that their traditionally red area is getting more purple, and so they localized. They are working on that. They have fully staffed up their precincts for the election. They have fully staffed up for early voting, all that kind of stuff. So that's working. So that's something that I want to take, and I've had conversations with other urban counties about doing something similar, that urbanizing and really localizing. One anomaly was we swept every judge race in Mecklenburg County where we ran a Republican. So obviously the message is working. We're figuring that out, what worked and how that worked. But it's tough, and what we are trying to do is help you guys statewide. We understand that if we get one voter, that's 2 votes actually. If they're not gonna, if they originally were gonna vote, we have 160,000 Republicans in Mecklenburg County. We're definitely third in voter registration, but we're understanding that we have to engage them better, and things like the RNC are helping to do that as well.
Thank you. Okay, who should be? I guess Mary, we start with you. What qualifications do you have in the unlikely event you have to temporarily serve in the chair's capacity if he was unable to serve? Yeah.
Well, during my 20 years of industrial experience, I worked with, I worked with the management team and was involved in executive decisions. And as a management team member, I have great respect for bringing people together and making the decision making. I do not relish the prospect of being the chairman. It's just one headache. Who wants it? I run again. Hey, there you go. You guys are here. But we have some comic relief. I really enjoy the prospect of being a wingman. I am a support person, and I am there to support all my team members and to be a business partner to everyone that's involved. I would, in my experience has been that in the unlikelihood that there is an opening for a chairman during that position, that we would immediately go into a huddle with the Central Committee and the Executive Committee and see what decision they would like to make as to what type of leadership they would like to make. Because, I mean, number one, I'm a team player, and I would like them to have the leader they want.
Thank you. Good. Anne-Marie?
Well, I'm in a unique position because I understand how the state party works. Having been in the executive committee for several years and then in the central committee, I understand how things work. Having been a county chair for 2 years, I also understand how you raise money. Fundraising is a huge part of the chairman's job, and I have been successful at fundraising in little old Watauga County. We've had Bernie Goldberg come up. We've had Capital Voices come up. We're working now to get Diamond and Silk in a very rural community. So I understand how fundraising works and how we have got to get out of the hot dog dinner mentality. I'm able to go and ask people for money. We have large donors in Watauga County, and I have been very active in raising money during my time as the chair. I also would go in and assess the landscape of what's going on. A knee-jerk reaction is not something that we need. It needs somebody that's steady and has a level head and can understand the process. So that's a very important quality. Also, everything has to be run through the Central Committee. The chairman is never the person in charge, okay? The Central Committee is where decisions have to be made. And I think that's something that we've lost sight of. So we need to get back on track in regards to that. And it also requires someone that is able to work with other people, meaning the executive director. So in my life, I am a mother of 5 daughters. Conflict resolution is my life. So anything that comes up, I try to hit head on. There's no room for playing nice. You have to hit a situation head on. You have to speak your mind, and you have to move forward. So those are the things that I would bring
Thank
to
you.
that.
When you accept the role of vice chair, you accept the expectation that you should move into that should there be unfortunate circumstances that create that. I've been doing this for 5 years as a county party vice chair. I understand the party, I understand the plan of organization, I understand keeping things afloat. A great personal example is when I was vice chair in Guilford County, my chair at the time, I was working in Winston-Salem and commuting back and forth, and my chair at the time had a big corporate restructuring, and he basically, and I love him to death, but he basically was like, I have to go to Wisconsin for 2 months right before the election, peace out. And so I kept it afloat because that's what happens. And I didn't get the glory, I didn't get the title, and that's okay. We kept it afloat. 2014, we produced the results. The RNC told us election night, you did what you needed to do for Tillis and for all those candidates. You did the numbers and you exceeded them. So we kept it afloat. I understand what it takes to keep the party afloat. I'm really upset that we got into this situation where we even had this sort of succession issue. I don't want that to happen at the state level again. I am prepared to fill that role. I personally have decided not to run on any sort of slate. I wanted to run independently because regardless, should I win, I want to be able to work with any of these 3 individuals. I want to bring our strengths together. I think it's really important to understand the Central Committee, understand how the party works, and understand somebody that's been in that role. And one thing I really want to do as vice chair, I'm big about giving plans and specifics of what I want to do. Hopefully you've been getting all my emails. I love communications, but one thing I really want to do is work better with the 100 county vice chairs. I've been trying to make that contact with them all. We have to train them better and get them prepared to be able to fill into that role of chair or beyond with the party leadership. That is something that is so critically needed, whether it be private Facebook groups, sharing best practices, but we have to train our vice chairs locally better as well. So that's one of the things I want to take into this role, but I'm fully prepared because that is what we need to be doing.
Thank you. Okay. Last question, very important. And I guess, who should I start with? Okay. As NCGOP Vice Chair, how would you restore confidence of the unaffiliated voters and the grassroots conservatives who have left the party and feel totally disenfranchised by it?
So I deal with this in Mecklenburg County. We have a lot of unaffiliated for business purposes. We have a lot of, we have to work better. I hate this ism. I hate being called a rhino or a Tea Party or a this or a that. We are Republicans, and we have to get that confidence back. We have to give the metrics. We have to give the plans. We have to give the right message. We have to have that confident message. For example, my campaign, I've had a strategic plan where I've had my messaging lined up. I've had everything in order. We cannot be reactionary. We cannot panic. We have to keep our pulse on the button. And so what we have to do is have that plan, like Michael talked about, a 24-month plan. I'll tell you right now, I applied to be the comms director for the state party. And I was told no because you live in Charlotte and because I can't afford you. Well, then Dallas found out that what I make for a living, and he goes, well, Fred, I could have afforded you. But we have to change how we're doing things, and we have to appeal to people better. We have to localize our message. We have to understand that what works here in Buncombe County may not necessarily work in McDowell or Burke. We've got to find that message that will better attract unaffiliated, that will better attract grassroots people, that will make everybody feel valued and brought to the table, because we all have strengths. And we have to understand that our values are better than the Democrats, and we have to better articulate to people how we can do that and how we can take it to the map to the Democrats.
Thank you.
I'm like Sarah. I hate more than anything the label game that we're playing, just like the Democrats are. We are not a party of identity politics. We are all Republicans, and it is time that we all put our shoulders to the wheel and we start working. Every person in this room has value in this party. Every person needs to be identified for that value. You're a grassroots worker, you're a party official, you are, whatever you are in this party, you have value in this party. And it's time that we take notice of everyone and what they're doing. I'm very appreciative of all the work that gets done around this state. And that means Michelle was an excellent vice chair in that she got around this state tirelessly. It's time that we looked at a way to get out into every rural community, every rural county, and let them know that the state party is here for you to aid and support in whatever you need. And that's the role that the vice chairman needs to take on. We need to help our affiliate groups. We need to engage with them and get them and make them feel value in every area that they can be effective. When I was the chair, I tried to reach out to every person in my executive committee and make them feel like their job was so important that we couldn't move without them. And that would be the same thing as that the vice chair needs to do. Somebody that reaches out and makes you feel like you are the most important person in the job that you're doing for this party. It's a huge task to get around to 100 counties. 100 counties now are operating kind of like little islands. We need to pull everybody together. We need to come together, stop arguing about who's this or who's that, because we are all Republicans and it's going to take us all to win every election, from the presidency for Donald Trump all the way down to every local election.
Well, number one, by making face-to-face contact with the people out in every one of the 100 counties, first of all, and sitting down with the people there to understand what their concerns are, and not being the person from Raleigh who comes out to your county to tell you how to run your county, but rather to come out to the county and ask, I'm here from Raleigh, what can I do to help you elect Republicans? And to make sure that as the chief assistant to the chairman and as they liaison with the Central Committee and other officers in the party, that we are keeping our commitments to the counties and the precinct chairs and our other valued team members out in the counties. I mean, that is the number one thing that we have to do that will change things, is that we have to make sure that we are following up on the commitments. That is where we've got to show the people that we mean it. We can make all the promises in the world, we can have the best messaging, but if we do not follow up on our commitments, and that is where my thing has always been perseverance. I can be a real nag about that. You told me you were going to do this. This is what we promised those people. We have got to follow through. And that is how we change that. When the people out in the counties, they see that we put our money where our mouth is and we follow through on our promises, that's when things will change. Not before. We have to show people.
Can I do my rebut, my one rebut? Sure. Okay. Just real quickly, not a rebut, but I just thought of something. One of the things that we have is Nation Builder. And there is some really cool data that we're not utilizing. What we have developed in Mecklenburg is our technology team. We're actually starting a Republican technology group where there are IT professionals. They are learning Nation Builder. There is so much untapped data. So this is our way, too, to help appeal better to grassroots, to unaffiliated, to people that maybe lean our way. So we have to do better. What that team is going to do is they're really going to learn Nation Builder. Hopefully with DCCA, we partner up. They're willing to go out into the communities and work with everybody on how to actually harness that and use that and do that micro-targeting and do some really cool things that have been really underutilized.
Thank you. You guys are terrific. This is I truly hope that this was helpful. And again, I will get those questions out to the candidates and we can answer them to your satisfaction, hopefully. And I hope everybody is going to this convention next week.
We're gonna hang around.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
All right.